Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Entrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofermento, and I am so very excited for all of us to learn from today's guest and fellow entrepreneur, because this is somebody that I love the vision that he has when it comes to the work that he does. This is someone that looks at technology not just as a tool that we use in our business toolkits and arsenals, but as something that can transform the way we operate, transform the way we bring our services to the market. I'm really excited to tap into not just his technological brain, but especially his business, his strategic brain, because this is someone who he articulates things in such a cool and interesting way that I think it's really going to resonate with all of us in our own businesses here today. So let me introduce you to Jim McNamara. Jim brings a practical lens to a challenge that every mid-market business is facing: digital transformation. Jim is the founder of 8 Penny Labs, where he helps companies turn vision into value faster, cleaner, and with a laser focus on client success. Jim works with leaders who know that in today's marketplace, digital transformation isn't a nice to have, it's a requirement. But that doesn't mean it has to be risky or overwhelming. From modernizing legacy tools to launching entirely new digital products, Jim and his team help mid-sized businesses unlock growth with real, usable solutions. And what I really love is that so much of his messaging is about what we need to talk about here in 2025, which is not going after just the shiny objects, making strategic and intentional decisions about how to manage these digital transformations to be more successful with our businesses. I'm personally very excited about this one. I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive straight into my interview with Jim McNamara. All right, Jim, I am so very excited that you're here with us today. First things first, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Brian. It's great to be with you.
Heck yes. You've got a lot to live up to today, Jim, because everywhere that I turn on the internet to find more about the stuff that you do, I love your attitude towards unlocking business growth. So before we get into that stuff, take us beyond the bio. Who's Jim? How'd you start doing all this cool stuff?
Sure. Yeah. So I graduated college as a literature major, and I didn't want to be a teacher or a writer. So I joined a business, a small, well-established business, and worked my way into IT. And from there, worked different parts of IT for different sized companies in different industries. And since 2004, I've been building software tools for companies in different industries, and learned how to build tools using teams remotely, offshore teams. And right around 2019, saw an opportunity to open a business, start a business. My wife and I started 8 Penny Labs, and our mission is really to level a playing field for small and mid-sized businesses, because we recognize that digital transformation is a requirement in today's digital marketplace. And the small companies, the mid-sized companies, typically either don't know how to do it, can't afford onshore, don't know how to use offshore, and we're that bridge to help them be competitive against the big guys.
Yeah, I love that overview, especially because I know how intentional you are with your words, and that phrase, digital transformation, it pops up everywhere within the work that you do. Talk to us about what that means for you, because you see that contrast between what enterprise level companies have access to and what us smaller guys have access to. Talk to us about that digital transformation.
Well, really, it's about digital transformation is about taking all of your old analog processes and making them digital, right? So people do it without really thinking about it whenever they adopt an enterprise tool like an accounting platform. That's nowadays it's digital, right? I mean, nobody would say, "Oh, I don't need an accounting system." We'll go back to the days of counting houses and that sort of thing. And so more and more we're using software which is digital, which is creating data that becomes lost or isolated in whatever form you're using it. And when that happens, there's an opportunity lost for how you could use that data to grow your business. The thing is, though, while I'm a supporter for sure of enterprise applications, I definitely think if you can buy it, you should buy it instead of building it. enterprise software is in the business of selling enterprise software, not integrating it into your environment and helping you use it strategically. And that's where I come in. That's the digital transformation that I'm talking about. And it's just becoming more and more a requirement. And it doesn't matter, how big you are or how small you are.
Yeah, I love the way that you think about these things. You've already called out one of those competitive advantages is offshore labor. And we behind the scenes, our team is located all over the world, which makes me happy because we're creating opportunities around the world. We're also getting a very diverse skill set. I think that when I was a kid, and especially when I was in business school, I remember our professors talking about all the talents here in the United States, but the rest of the world is talented in so many different ways, especially in the technological space. And so with that in mind, Jim, way too many people probably assume that custom builds and custom softwares are super expensive. Talk to us about that side of the coin, because expense, it's inevitably part of every conversation.
Sure. So, I mean, in a way, they're right. Custom software is expensive, which is why I say if you can buy what you need, you should. That's one of the first conversations I have with any prospect in a sales conversation. If you can buy it, do that. You'll be buying it from an expert in, say, accounting or whatever, and they're going to think of things and they're going to be able to support you in a much more cost-effective way. However, my customers are competitive by nature, and they're looking at, well, if everybody's doing this with enterprise software and I want to treat my customers different, then I need to do something different. And so they want to build certain things. That said, by using offshore resources, what we're able to do is produce an 8x improvement in their budget productivity, right? So that's not just the rates being lower, and the rates are lower, but it's also we can go basically twice as fast because our development teams are working through the night, overseas. And so they're handing off in the morning to whoever we have for user acceptance testing on the customer side. So you get a 2x improvement in speed there. And if you're going faster, you're spending less money.
Yeah, for sure. I love that perspective, especially because when I hear you talk about these things, where my head goes is you talk about if you can buy something, then do it. But where my head goes is how painful does it need to be? What's that delineating line? Where do we see it and we say, okay, hold on, it's time to look for something custom or to build something custom, as opposed to the alternative is obviously making do. And I feel like we make do in so many different parts of business. What's that fine line?
It's different for everybody. I was on a sales call with a customer of mine several years ago, and in one of the discovery calls, they said, we have this SaaS solution that we use. We hate them. They are wanting to charge us every time we speak to them, and we want to find. We think we can build it better. And create a better experience for our customers. And I was like, okay. And through that series of conversations, we engaged them. Now, we're not actually building that part. We're building all the infrastructure around it. They went with a specialized vendor, as they should have, because they're an expert in building that particular component. But what they saw what I saw was that thing that had them upset, where they were complaining about literally $250 anytime they needed to speak to anybody, launched an innovation cycle for them that they're still on. So it's seemingly a small thing that triggered them into, there's got to be a better way to do this than having to settle for what the vendors put out there.
Yeah, when I think about those conversations, Jim, what I'm super curious about is they obviously know there's a better solution out there. I wonder how much of your job and how much of your team's work revolves around let us figure out that better way of doing it, because I can't help. I always think about that Henry Ford quote where he said, if I asked my customers what they would have wanted, they would have said a faster horse. And us as customers, we know what the problems are. It's so hard to envision that future. And someone with the skill set of yourself and your team, how do you work through what that solution looks like?
Yeah, we do. I start the engagement with any customer with what I call a strategic road mapping engagement, where there are no developers involved till the very end. It's just me, my team, and them, and it's really focused on their business. What I find is most businesses, and I work mostly with business owners and executives, don't really know what the current situation is of their technological ecosystem, if you will. So they don't know that. They have some vision for where they want to go, but it's not really articulated well. And then they have no way to know if they don't know where they are and they can't articulate exactly where they're going, they have no way to get there. So I help them. That's the first step, is to create that strategic roadmap. And they might come to me with, hey, I want to build X or Y. And often X or Y isn't really what they need exactly. It might be part of it. It may not even be possible to do until they do some other, projects to produce the infrastructure for X or Y. And I help them see that. And what that does is it gives them the narrative and the strategy for where they are and where they want to go to produce the vision that they say they need to produce in their business. And the issue with a lot of times, the issue there is because they don't have a technological background, they don't know what's available to them. So you start to compromise in your thinking. So they couldn't come up with the solutions that we help them design. But we stay really focused on their desire to produce some vision and help them. We translate it into a technological vision, but they're already working on, I'm dissatisfied with some situation and I want a better one, and here's what I think could happen. When we bring in our technological expertise, it expands their thinking in a way that they can make better choices about where they're going and how fast to get there.
Yeah, I appreciate those insights, because what I'm hearing and seeing in our conversation today is that we're obviously talking about technology, but it seems to me like there's two underlying pieces of your value add that are inevitable and essential for all of us on the customer side. First and foremost is your understanding of the business strategy of, you're not just walking in there and saying, oh, you want a custom software built? Here's what we're going to do for you. You're understanding the broader picture and how it fits in with their business, which is of course important. But then secondly, and I really want to go deeper here, is it seems to me like you have an ability to ask the right questions to help them get at what really matters. As a customer, so frequently, especially with service-based businesses, I always think to myself, I don't know what I don't know. And fortunately today, I can lean on AI and I can ask it before an electrical company comes over to install a Tesla charger. That's a recent project. And I'll say, what questions should I ask? And it will help me there. But what sort of questions are you walking them through? How are you helping them to make sense of the things that they may not even know that they don't know?
Sure. That's exactly right. The dirty secret in my business, not in my specific business, but in my industry, is that, companies like mine will just take what you ask for and start to build it. And they'll charge you, by the hour until you can't stand it anymore. And you may or you may not get what you need. Likely you won't. I've come across a couple of different companies that have spent 12 months and 18 months respectively paying into a software company like mine and getting nothing except an assurance that they're very close to a delivery or a release to production. Well, that gives us all a bad name. So the questions I work on are fundamental about what's the business trying to produce. And it's not specific to their industry. They know what their specifics need to be for their industry. I bring the specific skills around translating those specific business needs into the technology they need. But I'm looking for, depending upon the area that they're in, like what are those problems they're trying to solve. I counsel them to stay away from telling me what technology they think they want to use and just stay focused on, well, what are the problems? And there's a whole host of questions that I use in there, different frameworks that I use that have developed over time to get to the real situation that they want to have in the end. And that plus what you know about where they are in the moment gives you a couple of different ways to go and paths to take.
Yeah, you mentioned obviously the hourly budget and how many people are just charged hourly. And you and I are both originally from the Boston area, and the big dig, if it taught us one thing, it was that a lot of projects go over budget and over timeline. Talk to us about that project roadmap. As someone who I have worked with developers on various things in the past, it's so hard because there's hourly pricing, there's project-based pricing, there's estimated timelines and roadmaps and deadlines and all of those things. What's your project roadmap actually look like, and what are those important considerations for people looking to develop custom software solutions for their own business?
Sure. So we do hourly. So there's two components to it. We have an onshore component and an offshore component. The offshore is all hourly. The onshore is fixed fee. But the bulk of the money is spent offshore, and it's hourly, and we do it that way for a reason. So when you try and do a software job that has fixed fee, and I do know some business owners that do this and they wrestle with it, but I don't do it. And the reason I don't do it is because as a human being, as you're seeing the progress for building out whatever it was that you said you wanted to build out, or that we agreed you wanted to build out, new things pop into your mind, new requirements that you then want to add. Well, if that wasn't in the original budget, that's going to be an extra, and it's not going to feel like an extra to the customer. They're going to say, well, that's what I meant. It's like, well, I mean, that gets into the reason I don't do it. It's like I can't know, even if I have what I would consider to be a perfect understanding of what you said, I can't know exactly what you said, and you're going to change your mind as you see things that evolve. So we do it by the hour, but we cap our hourly the hours spent in a month so that you have a budget line item, so that even if they work over that amount of hours, you don't pay for it. So we give you some ability to manage your budget and know what the ceiling will be. And if you use less of it, you use less of it, so you pay less of it.
Yeah, it's good to know that scope creep is a thing in every single industry, especially anytime we're dealing with clients. That's inevitably going to happen, even in what looks like simple projects. I'm thinking about all the designers I've talked to, and they said, yeah, they listed all of their demands for a logo. I delivered on it, and then they asked their spouse, and they completely changed their mind. How much of it is that? Because, Jim, we face this in every single business problem that we're looking to solve. Is the more we look at it, the more we stare at it, the more different ideas we have, especially the more cooks that are in the kitchen. We have all of that. How do you manage that scope creep? Because I find that in and of itself is a talent as well.
Yeah, so it's not really, I don't consider it to be scope creep, right? So again, it goes back to the humans. Anybody that's ever managed anybody and made a request of them and said what they wanted, and then had that person fulfill on that request, and it wasn't at all what you requested. It's just how they were interpreting your request, knows that that's the human condition. Like, there is no perfect way to communicate anything. That just gets amplified in a software project because software projects are more complex than just a regular request. But it is really just a regular request, except it's a highly complex request. So by having the roadmap that we start off with, we have an endpoint, we have a beginning point and an end point, and then we have a path that we're going to take. But we use Agile and Scrum methodologies to do the execution of our project, and we use two-week sprints. So think of it like if you've got the starting point and the end point, and you draw a straight line between the two of them, that's the path you want to stick to. But there's no sticking to that path exactly, right? So you're going to be like a sailboat tacking along that path in the general direction of where you want to end up. But by only doing 2-week sprints, you're only 2 weeks invested in whatever you're doing. So it's not that you want to be changing direction a lot, but by meeting daily with customers and every 2 weeks to make sure that the situation is still a situation that you want to be solving and you're headed in that direction, you can stay tighter to that line, which means you'll spend less time building, less money building, and get your product or whatever it is you're building out and in the hands of the users where you can start to produce a return with it.
Yeah, Jim, I've got to ask you this because I imagine it's on the mind of so many listeners and probably a lot of your potential customers as well. We all hear the hype online about these no-code solutions and how a lot of their advertising, it makes me seem, I fired one up once. It said that anyone in the world can create an iPhone app. And I was like, I always thought that this stuff was hard. So I fired up. Wasn't so easy, Jim. I did not launch and create an iPhone app. Talk to us about those code-free solutions because their marketing is aggressive. Their hypes are big, but are their promises fulfilled?
No. So low-code solutions should be marketed to solve really simple projects or problems. The way they make a low-code solution low-code is they make you compromise on what you need to do or what you're able to do. Right, so you can't if you're going to build something custom from scratch. You have basically a blank canvas, and it's up to the skills of your designers and your engineers as to what they can create. But that's not you are constrained inside of a low-code environment to do only what the owners of that platform allow you to do. So I've seen situations where somebody that I've been working with wants to go low code. They start down that path and they have to make so many complicated compromises to get to something reports say that would be easy to do if it was just custom code, that it takes them extra time. They compromise on the output. And then when they want to change it, like something in the business changed, they have to unwind all of those compromises, make those changes all again. So the cost to actually maintain it's higher. That, and, if you're going to, not everybody has a background to be able to build an application in a way that is secure, scalable. It's just those two things. It's just not that accessible to the general public.
Yeah, and those two words are so key, secure and scalable. Even if we could build some things, for example, I did build on Bubble a coffee shop rating tool that pulls from Yelp's API. Simple enough, but yeah, could someone probably get into that database very easily? 100%, because I didn't even think about those things until you just said it, Jim. On that note, obviously one of the other big elephants in the room is, of course, AI, where everybody believes that code is easier now than it ever has been, and it's probably true it's easier now than it used to be. What's your take on AI? And I would imagine that your team, to some extent, you're incorporating AI into your projects. Yeah. How's that shaking things up?
Yeah, it does make things easier, but again, we're solving complex problems, so it's taking some of the work and it's automating it, but it's automating it in the hands of a developer who knows how to put it together in with the architecture required to keep it safe and scalable and do what it needs to do for the business. So I've heard analogies like, they used to be draftsmen and, they used to draw on a big board. Then they moved in the 80s and 90s to CAD, and that helped automate things, but they were still required to be draftsmen. I don't know how it's going to go. It's not really to a place where you can build an enterprise application without actually having the technological background to know what you're doing with those tools. But it's an interesting development, and we're watching it, we're using it, we're getting some productivity out of them. But we're solving complex problems that you don't want to create a problem by going full AI and have it be insecure or not architected right, or creating some kind of a problem for the business.
So what you're saying is you can't just hand me a stethoscope and have me start diagnosing heart problems?
Sure, I could. I'm not going to line up to be your patient, though.
That's true, for sure. That is absolutely true. Along those lines, I do want to switch gears a little bit, Jim, because I teased it at the top of today's episode that I love getting into your strategic mind, because when I look at your business and all the things that you do, I see all the various components. You're managing your client relationships. You're managing a worldwide developer team. You're managing the actual projects, the budgets, the timelines, all of those things. So I want to ask you this question, not with the subject matter hat on that you have, but as a fellow entrepreneur and business owner, how does Jim the executive make sense of all of these things? How do you stay organized? How do you make sure all this stuff stays on track?
I get good help. We try and keep our costs low, but we outsource many of the requirements that many of the business skills that we need from accounting, legal, marketing, that sort of thing. So we're using the best people we can find, no matter where we can find them, to help us fulfill on the commitments of the obligations of our business. That's the first thing. I mean, yes, we do develop software, and yes, we use technology to help run the business, but it is a business. It's, money in, money out, profits at the end, right? So all of those things need to be managed. And, my background, I did do an MBA. I've been studying business for a long time, been in different businesses. So I understand how it all needs to work. And we use technology, we use AI tools to help scale us where we need to be scaling, to automate some things, and we have proprietary tools too for how we manage delivery with our customers.
I had a feeling that was going to be one of the factors inside your toolkit is, of course, you have proprietary tools that help make your life easier in your operations. I want to selfishly ask you this question because I get this question from listeners all the time who have service-based agencies where they ask, how can I keep my clients happy along the way? There are inevitably those points along the way in any project where you guys are working hard behind the scenes, but the client is sitting there seeing the invoices and saying, well, what am I getting? When's this thing going to be done? What is that during the course of a project? Because I would imagine some of yours run quite long. During the course of your project, what do those client relationships look like? Are they weekly or monthly meetings? Are they weekly emails where you're dropping them notes? I'd love to hear some insights there.
Yeah, so we're meeting with some customer representatives every day as part of a development process. One of the things that we do is understanding that our customers don't often, or usually don't, have the skill to build software on their own. We need them to own that process, right? So we help them institute the structures on their side of the business that I know that they're going to need to be successful in the software innovation domain. So we help them produce what's called a product owner, or somebody who can own the product for the business, and we meet with them every day. That way, there's always clear lines of communication. And then every 2 weeks, we do what's called a sprint review, where we're bringing in people outside of the Scrum team to see what we've done, see what we've released, see what's in user acceptance testing, have them be able to ask us and the whole development teams there, and the product owner and anybody else from their business that, how's it going, what's it doing? And I think the big thing there is transparency, right? So those two examples I gave you where the business owner spent, 12 months and 18 months, two different business owners, and got nothing. What they received really was assurances all along the way. And I used to buy services for software development, and now I sell services for software development, and transparency is the biggest challenge that business owners who buy services like mine face. And it's kind of surprising because it seems just simple to me that you would want to be transparent so that if there's a problem, you can jump on it right away. I always tell my teams, tell me the bad news first. The good news can wait. We can celebrate later, but if we really need to dig into something, I want to know what the bad news is. And, one of our first customers had two other software development groups working for them. We came in to do a small project, and within, I think, a month, maybe two, the teams that were working with us, or the team that was working with us, and also working with those other two vendors, asked the executives, can we get rid of those other two and just work with Jim's team? Because we just made it easy for them. And part of that is not letting them get trapped in a situation and not know the situation they're in by showing them every day, every 2 weeks, here's what's going on, here's where we are, here's where we think we'll be at this milestone. And so, over communicate. That's, to me, that's the biggest way to build trust with your customer base.
Yes, amen to that. That is good business right there. I'm speaking now not as a fellow entrepreneur, but as a consumer, as a customer. That's good business. And listeners, I always say success leaves clues. You're listening to Jim here, who is incredible at what he does in his industry, has done incredible work for the clients that they work with. This is why, as much as we talk about the tech solutions that Jim and his team are able to bring to his clients, equally important is all of this intangible stuff. So pick up these success clues from Jim here in today's interview. And Jim, with that in mind, I love asking this question at the end of every episode because it taps into, again, that entrepreneurial hat, that executive mind of yours. And that is, what's your one best piece of advice for listeners? Knowing that we're being listened to by both entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs at all different stages of their own growth journeys, as a fellow entrepreneur, what's that one thing that you want to leave them with today?
Well, I think it's really what we were just talking about is take care of your customers, right? So if you have, I'm honored that anybody would want me to help them build software. And I do everything I can to build and maintain trust with them because, if I waste their time, waste their money, I'm taking money out of the family, off the table for the business owner and or their employees because they're wasting money and therefore they don't have it to distribute to themselves or to their employees. So that's a huge honor and responsibility. And with that, because of that, I tell them, stay focused. When you're dealing with somebody like me, stay focused on the problem you want to solve, not the technology of the day, right? So nowadays you can see it's AI. Oh, I want to chat AI. It's like, well, maybe you do. Let's talk about it. AI has been around since the 50s. We've been building traditional AI tools for decades. Let's see what the problem is first, and then we'll apply the right technology.
Boom. I love that. If listeners tune into today's episode thinking, Jim, you are going to be like that cliche of when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail, and they're just going to think your answer to everything is technology. I love the human element, the business strategy element. So many of your answers, yes, technology enables that growth, but even here to the very end, you're bringing all of it back to that human element, taking care of our customers. I love that. It's no surprise to me. That's why you've been so successful with all the things that you and your global team are up to. So for listeners who want to check out your business and go deeper into your work, and it looks like you're super accessible even via your website, that people can get a hold of you and have these types of conversations. So drop those links on us. Where should listeners go from here?
Well, our website is 8pennylabs.com. That's the number 8 pennylabs, all one word, .com. You can find us on X and on LinkedIn. Our company pages are 8 Penny Labs. And then you can find me, James McNamara, on both of those platforms. And yeah, check out the content. We write a blog. I write a blog, and it has all of my philosophies about how and why I do what we do for our customers. And it's a great way, I think, to get a little bit of a view into how I think about how I would help you and what I wouldn't do just for the sake of money.
Yes, I love that fine line and that delicate balance, because I find that it's that contrast that's really important for all of us to see. So listeners, you've seen how much Jim loves not just technology, but business as a whole, and how much he loves thinking about these solutions. Even if you're sitting there thinking, I don't know what I don't know, and I don't know what a solution would look like, I love that there are incredible problem solvers like Jim out there. So don't be shy. Check out the links down below in the show notes, no matter where it is that you're tuning into today's episode. You don't have to remember any of those links. We're linking to all of those places down below in the show notes. You'll find his business website, his personal LinkedIn, as well as his company socials. So definitely check those out. Otherwise, Jim, on behalf of myself and all the listeners worldwide, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thanks for having me, Brian. It's been a pleasure.